On a face value, someone in ITS might be like, that's ridiculous. We don't have to explain that. But we have to put our minds in the mind of an educator who has 50 things happening in their head all at one time. And they're thinking about the teacher they have to call or the parent they have to call back and their marks and what the lesson's going to be, blah, blah, blah. They're not thinking with a cybersecurity lens all the time. So that's the service we provide to them. Here's the why.
I have said many times, and I probably said it on this particular episode, that being a superintendent or director of education has got to be one of the most complex and underappreciated sort of senior roles, leadership roles there are in the world, really, because there's no other job that requires you to be accountable to so many different groups of people, from 5-year-old students to parents to teachers to support staff to governments to ministries of education to trustees. The list goes on. And to be able to navigate all those different groups, speak to each of them in a way that's thoughtful and specific to their needs and their interests takes a lot of skill. And Katherine MacIver today, I think, is one of those people that exemplifies how to do that. So in our conversation today, Katherine talks a lot about communication. She talks a lot about juggling all of these things. And she does it with, I would say, such class and elegance. And that's why I really wanted to have her on the program. So Katherine MacIver is the Director of Education at Hastings, Prince Edward School Board in Eastern Ontario, based out of Belleville, that kind of central east between Quebec and Toronto, if you will. And I've just appreciated getting to know her team. They're really a delight to work with. I think this episode really will help you understand why that is. So enjoy my conversation today with Katherine MacIver. So just as we were talking before I hit record, I asked you about how the year has gone, and you said surprisingly well, despite the noise. So here's just I don't know if this is a big question to start with, but how do you, as a leader, push the noise out of the way so that, because that's your job, right? Get the noise out of the way so that people can do the things that they're there to do. So what are your kind of, I don't know if you think through strategies or approaches to do the thing you're supposed to do and let people do the things they're supposed to do?
Yeah, I would say I would go back to my Stephen Covey 7 Habits of Highly Influential People training. It goes way back in my career, but keeping the main thing was always a part of that teaching. And so how do you focus on the big rocks? I think sometimes it's really tough because you can get really dragged into the itty bitty and the nitty gritty. Everything from using structures to keep your conversations and your meetings focused on the big thing to practice of let's get back to students. Let's get back to student achievement. Let's get back to interrupting those rabbit holes that we tend to get down. But it takes a lot of practice.
Yeah.
And you have to be diligent, right? Because you can get so easily sucked into all the stuff that comes along with our jobs.
And I think, again, my observation with superintendents and directors can often be, sometimes you're in a bit of an interesting demographic simply because of these sort of, in Ontario, you're maybe considered a mid-sized board. Would that be reasonable to say? You're not as big as the Toronto boards, but you're not like some of the rural boards. So I don't know where you kind of...
I would say we're mid. Yeah. We're not small, but we're not. Yeah.
But all that to say that, especially those folks that are leading the really larger districts, are spending an inordinate amount of time on the politics of it, of the job, of the sort of the big stuff. And what I notice about, and I think this is you in particular, that maybe not even mid-sized directors and superintendents do, is your level of engagement with the actual student work. And I know that simply because in the work that I've been able to do with your board, you've been there, you've wanted to know. I know in the past, literacy and those kind of things are really top of mind for you. So I'm always curious about the degree to which directors and superintendents choose to be part of the pedagogical conversations in their district versus, and again, I'm not being critical of it, the people that have said, I hire other people to do that because I have the other thing. So just maybe talk a little bit about your own choice to be, I don't want to say in the weeds, but certainly at the ground level of what's happening in classrooms and why you've done that with your leadership, or whether that's just worked out that way.
So that's fascinating. We were just talking, I think, 2 weeks ago about how do people in those really large boards stay connected. And it's not that they can't. I would imagine it's tough. It's tough to stay grounded just because of scope. So I think I've been fortunate to be in the size board that I'm in. I think that's part of my choice and my decision making to be in the size board that I'm in. But I really approach it as this is the reason we exist. We exist to educate kids. The only reason that I have a job is to ensure that our students are being successful and that our teachers are supported in order to help students be successful, and our principals are prepared to support teachers to help students to be successful. It's this whole cascade model.
Right.
But if I'm not in the schools at the student desk staying connected to learning, I think I've lost my way. I've lost the thread, right, that ties it all together. So it's really important to me. And I think the size of my board, I'm just really fortunate that I'm able to do that. I would say I've had to have conversations with my team to say, okay, do you feel like I'm micromanaging?
Right.
And they're like, no, you're not a micromanager, but man, you ask really tough questions. And those tough questions are the things that keep me connected.
And again, I'm going to assume that of all of the specific pedagogical classroom student-based conversations, there are specific areas that you are perhaps more passionate about, or like you're really, I'm going deeper with this one because of my own. So what would that be? I don't know if it's assessment or literacy, or is there something that just in your past has said, I'm always going to be very close to this?
So I would say skill-based approach, right? Like my questions are always around how are we skilling students for their future? Whether that's mathematics or literacy, I do see those two pieces as being like the foundation. If we do that well, we've skilled students to take on additional, more complex challenges. So I would say it lives there. But I'm really focused on skilling students and making sure they're well equipped.
So here's another a curiosity that I have, so in my previous, when I was with our local school district here in Saskatchewan, we had started some work, and I can't tell you where it went. We'd started some work in tracking. You talk about skills or whatever, right? And so for most people, graduation rates are a metric of success, not the only one, but a metric of a success. And probably you look at kids' ability to get into post-secondary, those kind of things, another measure of success. But when you talk about skills, I do think about, what about 5 years after graduation? Like, what about what impact might our kids? I don't know. And again, maybe I'm putting you on the spot because the answer might be like, we haven't done anything with it, which is interesting. But I'm just wondering, to what degree can you look at that idea of skills and say, we have had an impact because we have some metrics of how students have done in their adult careers, or whatever that means. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm just exploring the idea of us doing more than just, okay, we graduated 89 or 93% of our students and we're done.
Yeah, and I wish I did have that metric about where are they 5 years from now. I was part of a different board that they actually did a survey and phoned graduates. I had a student hired for the summer to phone graduates 2 or 3 years to find out where did you actually land versus where you thought you were going to land. So there's some interesting data coming out of that. I would say our data is far less scientific and far more qualitative. Oh. I came into this board saying strong schools build strong community and strong communities build strong schools, really seeing that network and partnership of we all need to work together to help our students and help our communities. That still sticks with me. But I would say I hear positive things in our community about what they're seeing from our graduates. I hear positive things about where we're headed as a board. So I'm taking that as a little bit of data that we're on the right track and moving in the right direction. We still have a long way to go. Dean, I would tell you that in our specific area of the province where what we walked into, We have room to grow for graduation rates. We have room to grow once we use the provincial standards of our standardized testing. We have room to grow there. But I'm like so proud of our teachers and how they have dug in and started to see results from their work. And we're seeing growth in student skills and literacy. We're seeing growth in student skills and mathematics. We saw a good uptick in graduation. Now we want to further push because we know if kids don't have that piece of paper, contacting them for 5 years from now doesn't matter. They need that piece of paper in order to move on to something productive.
And just added to that, I think about the whole idea of retention, not just in the school board itself, but in the community. So I think lots of rural places that I work with, this is such a big priority to make sure that we provide opportunities. Again, schools are limited, but for kids to graduate and want to stay in the community. So I wonder about even ideas around, do you have this, because you're in this, again, the spotlight, you're pretty close to, you got a couple major places that people can move off to, which I'm sure a lot of people do because of opportunities in the bigger centers. But I guess I wonder about the degree to which that community spirit and desire to stay in that, that region, the Hastings, Prince Edward County region exists. And so is it a place that people want to stay and kids want to graduate and live and work in the community that they grew up in?
So it's interesting because I'm actually going to flip that around a little bit based on our perspective. So we do have students that stay around in the community. And we get some good data about college and universities and apprenticeships and where do students go. And it shows us that they really stay in Eastern Ontario as a whole.
Okay, yeah.
But our local colleges have a lot of our students. And to the extent where it's almost as if, you wish and you hope that kids would go further afield,
right,
to experience some things. I might have some business owners and so on and so forth say, "What, Catherine, what are you saying?" But it's a really interesting dynamic that they do stay close to home. And that's why our community college, Loyalist College here, is so important. And the program that they offer is so important because that's where our students end up going, a large number of them.
Yeah.
Is fascinating. I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that our students get outside of the classroom to see what's actually available in their community as well, because there is lots of opportunity locally. I don't know that we, not just Hastings, but even as education systems as a whole, do enough to expose students to the opportunities that are out there.
Yeah, that's always an ongoing challenge and one more thing to try to include in the educational experience is those as well. But so when you think of your board in general, and you've been there at least 5 years, more than 5 years?
Just finishing my 5th year this year.
What are you most proud of? Like if you had to give the elevator pitch to somebody to say, here's what you need to know about Hastings, Prince Edward County, what do you tell them?
Yeah, and so it is really a big community. I'm most proud of the growth that we've shown in student achievement. We know when you look at social determinants of health and things like that, education plays such a big role. So I'm really proud of that growth in student success that we've shown. Really proud and excited about a new strategic plan that we have to guide us for the next 5 years that is really skill focused. It's simple. Dean, it's on one page. It's a graphic. And we've heard good things from our system about, hey, I actually understand this. I actually know what we're doing and where we're going. So I'm really proud about that. And I think really specifically, my celebration is the conversations that are happening in our schools, particularly about numeracy, teaching numeracy, but also about literacy, the depth of knowledge that our educators have about students and what they need to do next. We weren't having those conversations in the same way 2 years ago. And so that evolution, I'm just incredibly proud of the system and excited for what lies ahead, because we are talking about students, their success, the next steps in learning. How are we going to support them to continue to grow?
And again, my link to your board has certainly been in the AI conversation. And just to echo that and expand on that is the level of conversation that's part of the literacy conversation for sure. And I think the degree to which your folks are willing to wrestle, if you will, with some of the hard questions that are out there, which we don't have. And again, I think generally speaking, that's not always been a comfortable place for educators to be, because we're not too good at, I think, gray areas. We just want to tell us what to do. What is the way we're supposed to approach this? And there isn't, we will work towards some, but we really need to be people engage in these conversations and what can surface from that. So I think that you don't have, when you say conversations, that doesn't happen without a sense of community and trust that has to be there. So I wonder if even you can maybe even back up to think about, like, how did you get to a point where people can have these kinds of dialogues and be comfortable by, I don't know if I agree with what you've just said, that kind of thing, and not feel like that's an attack on anybody, but that's part of the learning, that we push each other's thinking.
Yeah, you're talking about how do you build culture, right?
Yeah.
And I think I've been here 5 years and I'm still building culture and working towards something. So I think it's something that happens every day. It happens through every interaction that you have. It either makes you or breaks you. And sometimes you have to be humble and go back and apologize sometimes when you didn't maybe act in ways that supported the culture that you want to build. But I would say, I said to you about my team saying that I ask really tough questions. And that's over time, they've come to realize, oh, this isn't coming from a place of Catherine's on the attack.
Right.
She actually wants to know. She's actually curious. And she's okay if we don't have the answer. And she's also okay if I don't give the answer that I think she wants. But you got to walk the walk.
Yeah.
You have to live it every single day, because we can talk about lots of different things, but if you're not showing it through your actions, it falls on deaf ears. We've worked really hard as a central team to try and de-silo, to try and connect our work and see ourselves in each other's work. That's an ongoing piece, right? Because you can slip back into your silos really easily. But we're able to have conversations about, okay, we debrief something and say, what went wrong there? What would we do differently in the future in order to make sure that we're coordinated in our approach? I have an amazing senior team. Like, I have an amazing group of superintendents. We don't always agree. We're not always happy with each other, but there's a lot of respect there and a lot of laughter.
Yeah.
Like, we have fun in the work, because sometimes it's really tough. And so, yeah, that team is so important.
And I also think, as part of, like you said, I think you're spot on. Like, it happens every interaction at a time. That's how you do it. Like, it's not, oh, tomorrow we're going to have a meeting that we're going to be building our culture with. That's not how it works. But I also think, as part of it, is to, whenever possible, to call out, okay, the reason why we did this thing is for that. It's not even about the outcome of the conversation. The reason we brought all these diverse groups together is not because we thought, and yes, it maybe led to a really good outcome and decision, but it was so that we could de-silo, so that we could learn with and from each other, so that we could begin to trust one. Like, I think even helping people understand why things are done in a certain way isn't always just so that it can accomplish the thing. So, and I feel like your team knows that. Like, there's a sense of, yeah, there's a purpose to this beyond just the outcome of that.
Yeah. I worked with a director early on in my career, and she was a very strong female leader. Not always had the EI skills, but that's okay. But she used to have this piece about 9 times. And this has stuck with me throughout my entire career. And it's about communication, and that you have to communicate things 9 times in 9 different ways sometimes, in order for it to sit with people, for them to actually absorb it, to make it part of their working memory. And explaining the why behind things, like, we have to connect the dots for people, because sometimes it's not always apparent. Like, why are you making us change our passwords? Here's why. Ultimately, we want to make sure it's smooth sailing for you in your classroom every single day. And in order to do that from a cybersecurity perspective, we're asking you to change your password. Like, something even that, what on a face value, someone in ITS might be like, that's ridiculous. We don't have to explain that. But we have to put our minds in the mind of an educator who has 50 things happening in their head all at one time, and they're thinking about the teacher they have to call or the parent they have to call back and their marks and what the lesson's going to be, blah, blah, blah. They're not thinking with a cybersecurity lens all the time. So that's the service we provide to them. Here's the why. And we look at this, like when we talk about sort of leadership and leadership development, we're looking for people who are systems thinkers, who can connect those dots and help make sense of things. I recall when I was in the classroom and working with teachers as an administrator, they're like, oh, one more thing, right? They had initiative-itis, where it's just one more thing piled on top. And so we have to show how things are interconnected and helpful to a classroom teacher so that it makes sense for the system.
But there's a real skill, though, that you have to have where, and this goes back to your job of clearing the path so people can just do the thing, but you're simultaneously helping them understand that the thing they're doing is part of a bigger thing, right? And the password example is a great one of, I see this, it's asking me to renew my password again. This is so annoying. Now I'm stuck with this thing. So now I, as the individual, I'm just annoyed. That's all I am at that point. And I'm not thinking about the fact, but you do this because there are thousands of other people in this organization and millions of dollars and all kinds of other resources that are being protected by the fact that you do. So so that's the skill, right? Like this communication piece, I think I love this 9 times thing, but even within those 9 times, doing it in such a way that is not overloading them with like too much information. I didn't need to know the fact that the system got hacked 3 weeks ago. Maybe I don't, but I do need to know it in such a way that I can at least say, okay, it's annoying, but I get it. It makes sense, right? So there's a real, probably a skill over time that I'm going to guess that most people, one of them, haven't even processed. What are those communication tricks and skills that accomplish it without just dumping it on people? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that one, because I just thought of that now as you shared that.
As an English teacher, when I was teaching in high school, I taught English. Purpose and audience. What's the purpose of your communication and who are you communicating to? Because you're going to say something totally different to parents,
right,
than what you're going to say to your teachers. And you hit it bang on the head, right? Only the information that matters to them. What is important? And so the ability to get into the minds of what is it that our parents want to know or need to know. And to be honest, oftentimes I'll rely on some of my trustees who are parents to be like, what would parents want to know about this? And so you get that feedback and you're like, all right, I can tailor my communication so that it's good for parents and it's not over explaining.
Yes. Yeah.
It's given them what they probably want to know. And you don't always hit the mark and you have to be okay with that, right? But you got to try.
That's right. When you think about, let's keep it more recently, but you could go back beyond your time in Hastings. But when you think of a leadership challenge that kind of really maybe shaped you, like something that caught you off guard, or was like, that was really hard, or maybe even didn't handle it the way you thought you should have, but you remember that was a really big moment in my leadership development. What sort of specific challenge comes to mind for you that says that was a big thing for me in my development as a leader?
I'm going to go back to something you talked about earlier, like the distractions, right? I find the big challenge right now in Ontario is to buffer people from some of the rhetoric that's out there. And so we've got so much stuff in the news. We've got so many things coming out, politics coming out. We're entering into negotiations. And so there's so many opportunities right now to pull us off of our core work, to affect culture in negative ways. How can we boost morale? How can we keep people positive and focused? How do we support people when they're feeling overwhelmed by some of this stuff that's coming out? I think I'm going to say I don't have the solution for that, except to be thinking about sometimes we need to have a little bit of fun. March break is a wonderful thing because people need to get away, take a break from it, and come back. And I think we need to celebrate all the good, right? To try and minimize all the other stuff that's going on, because it can easily overtake that main thing. I would say in my role, probably some of the governance matters that have come up recently have been professionally challenging, about negotiating the role between you're an employee, but you answer to the Ministry of Education, but you work for a board of trustees, a group of 10 that I work with. We've had some things happen at the governance level in our board, and trying to not only buffer my team, because they don't need to be a part of that, that's just going to be noise for them, but even buffer myself, right? To be able to get that perspective and be like, okay, this isn't 100%. This isn't why you're in the role. You're in the role for this. You're a support mechanism for that. Trying to get perspective and maintain perspective, would say, is probably my biggest leadership challenge lately.
Yeah, I just say when you look at all of the books written on leadership, oftentimes coming from the world of business and so forth, there's no other, I can't think of another role in the world that requires you to navigate so many different organizations and stakeholders and people that have different, not necessarily competing agendas, but certainly not the same. And as a director or superintendent of schools do, like, you just have so many people, right? From kids to teachers to parents to support staff to trustees to government. Like, it's just a myriad of people that you have to, that you're accountable to. And trying to navigate that, I just think, man, you do such an amazing job of, and I think you call it out, that's not easy to do. And you have to remind yourself that, all right, this isn't, this is in the way, but this is really important. This isn't as important as I thought. All of these things you're constantly juggling so that you can maintain it. But again, what I would say from my limited time in your board is that I've just always felt a spirit of calmness when I've been around your team and your people, that there isn't that. And because I've gone in places where it feels like people they can't even focus on the thing you're doing because they're thinking about 12 other things. And I don't know, however you've done it and been part of that, I just would say well done and navigating that. But that's a big task.
That's a lovely compliment for our board and our team.
Yes.
So I hope you don't mind if I share that with them, because I love the word you used, calm. We need to be calm and be the calm and help others to be calm. It's when you talked about all the complications that come along with education, when all the complications, I think of our teachers in the classroom that they have, it is like no other business.
It's wild.
Because our stakes are so high. Like, we are shaping kids every single day. That is high stakes work.
Yeah, like I think about talking to people. We talked about cybersecurity. I said, what other organization has everything from CFOs who are dealing with millions and millions of dollars logging into a system, and also a 5-year-old that can get into your system? That's bizarre that we have to account for all of that. So that I think is fascinating. But the other thing I love sharing this story about calm. And this was a number of years ago, and I was doing some workshop somewhere. And of course the technology didn't work or whatever it was. Right. So I'm not frustrated, but I'm dealing with it and I'm talking about it. And I had one middle school teacher say, this is just so beautiful. She said, I love it when the technology doesn't work, because she says it's an opportunity for me to demonstrate to my students how an adult handles a problem without freaking out. Because many of the kids in that classroom have never seen that before, because they live in homes where mom and dad, when something goes wrong, they panic, they get upset, they don't handle it well. So she said, I get to model that for them. Like, it's fine that it didn't work. Like, life will go on. We'll figure out something else. We'll get, like, she just said, there's again, back to you. Again, I would love it if you shared that story with the team so that they continue to highlight that and model that for their colleagues, right? It's fine. We'll get it figured out. Let's just take the temperature down. And again, we live in a world today where I think you can't get enough of that. We need more of those kinds of.
And interesting, the mindset of that educator, right? To look at it as an opportunity,
Right.
not a challenge.
Yeah.
What an opportunity this is. This is a gift for us.
Yep, 100%. So the other question I want to ask you is about growing leadership. So I think one of your probably many other things you have to be thinking about is this whole idea of concession and a succession, and who's the next principal that you need, who are the next leaders that you need. So what advice do you give if you identify you're walking around a building, you notice a third or fourth year or maybe a second year teacher that you think that person has real leadership qualities? So what advice do you give them so that they can then be more intentional about how they might choose to have a role in leadership?
Yeah. So my advice would be, don't turn down an opportunity. Look for opportunities around you. Use those people around you to soak up as much as you possibly can, right? Because every day is a learning day. We're going to learn something about ourselves. We're going to learn something about our professional work. So to look at those opportunities and then to find your people who are going to help you grow and develop. That you don't need someone like-minded, but I think there is an element of find the people who inspire you to be better, to do better, to grow, and work with them. That's really important. I've actually been working with a group of staff from across the system on a new leadership framework for HPE, specifically for that reason, Dean, is we're like, okay, when we're talking about leadership and as a senior team, we're saying, what defines great leadership? And do we even know, and can we articulate it? And if we can't articulate it, how are people in our system able to think about leadership? And so we're building a new leadership framework to talk about the competencies and the skills, but also the mindsets that we feel are important. And so systems thinking is one of them. That whole idea about the proactivity and thinking about things as opportunities versus challenges, the ability to connect, right, and explain the why. We've talked about flexibility. Like these days, if you want to move into leadership, you need to be flexible and nimble, because if you're going to be stuck in this is the way, and I think about our AI journey and I'm like, oh my goodness, like how many times have we revised, pivoted, thought one thing and then been like, ooh, we didn't think about this. Yeah. And so that need to be nimble and to be flexible and open in your stance is so important to leadership today.
Yeah. So I wonder if when you look back at the various roles you've taken on in your leadership journey, was there one that was a bigger step than another that you go, oh, it wasn't as smooth a transition as I had hoped because there was just such a big learning curve? Is there one that you go, yeah, that was a big jump?
Oh, so I think when I moved from a principal to a system principal in my former board, and I moved into the system role, I feel like that was an eye opener for me. And I think when I sat in my school with my people and I networked with my secondary principals and other principals that I worked with, I thought we were all on the same page. We did things differently, but similarly, and when I moved up into the system role, I think I looked around and went, oh, wow, we're really different, right? Like it really came to mind about, yeah, we think differently, we approach things differently. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I don't think I was prepared for how much difference there was.
In that role, that's a great point, is the fact that you don't have the opportunity to build the level of relationship that you do at a school level, where you're with those people every single day and you can actually, the culture is potentially easier to do than at a system level, where there's people that you might actually meet them maybe once a month, maybe less than that. And so to try to understand their perspectives and then realizing, oh, they think differently about certain things. And now what? You're not going to be with them every day to sync up in any way. You're going to have to do that a little differently. Yeah, that's a good point. That's really, I think it's just important those are the things that I think are important for the classroom teacher, the school principal to understand. I think that's what you do as a system leader, to say it's not just about you. Like you might love your school and we want you to love your school and do great things, but like we have a responsibility not just to you, to others, and there's circumstances that other places have that require all that kind of stuff, right? That's something important for people to know, I think, and so at some level anyway.
Yeah, and not sugarcoat it. You got to be honest.
Yes, exactly. One more question, then we'll get into some quick hitters before we go here. So this one is one that people actually hate this question, but I ask it anyways. You have to pick one person that you're grateful for, not 5, not 3, one person that you are grateful for in education? And you talked about your journey and when you talked about young leaders, you talked about finding people that kind of inspire you. So maybe it's in that vein, but maybe it's somebody just completely different that you just thought about today or yesterday that you're just grateful for.
Yeah, lots of people along the way, right? You don't get where you are by not having connections to people, having help and assistance and guidance. But it would be Marianne Bishop. So Marianne Bishop was a student success lead in the first board I worked in, because this is the third board. I can't hold the job, Dean. This is my problem. But she, from very early on, was a key mentor for me. She was a kind but courageous leader. I think that's where I learned how to ask really tough questions from her. And ironically, so I knew her from when I worked in Northwestern Ontario. She worked there. When I moved boards, she happened to have retired and moved nearby. She continued to mentor me, connect, take an interest. And it wasn't always about education. A lot of our conversations were about leadership.
Yeah.
And her biggest thing was to treat your people well. You need to be there. You need to treat your people well. And you need to be vigilant that you are always focused on students every single day.
And
So,
obviously she was a good mentor, because those things are things that you've obviously continued to work on and be part of your leadership. All right, 3 questions to end. First is, what are you reading or listening to today for your own learning?
Oh, okay. So I have to confess, last week I was on holidays, so I read Beach Reads, which was also good for my own learning, right? Because I think every once in a while you got to take a little
100%.
break and do something for you personally. Next on my bedside is a book called Let Them.
Mel Robbins?
Yeah, Let Them. So that's next on my to read book. And actually, to be honest, it's probably a to listen book, because I like to, when I'm driving, we have a fairly big board and I like to listen as I drive. So I'll probably listen.
That's a good one.
Next.
And so you mentioned last week you had a bit of vacation, you had to get away, so you're doing some beach reading, which is great. But do you have also something that's maybe on the go, a binge watch or something like that, that's a guilty pleasure, however you want to frame it, but just something that's, I need to just not think about all the things at school. I need to think about, I just want to take a break. What is that? What's on that list?
So with my husband, I'm watching The Pit.
Yes.
So we watched The Pit together. And I've just started on my own to watch a show called Industry.
I just started that one too. I'm on like the second episode or something like that.
I think I might be on episode 3, but I saw it on a TikTok talk about confessions, where someone recommended it. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch that.
I'm trying to think of, because I got to Industry from somewhere else that I think I just finished something, and it was, I don't remember what it was, but anyway, I'm giving it a try. So we'll see how long. But yeah, The Pit is, yes, we will. The Pit is definitely a fascinating dive. And my wife doesn't actually watch it. She just does this because she can't look at some of the, they get pretty graphic in what they're digging into inside the human body, which is wild sometimes. The other day with the guy holding up the leg, here's just someone's leg. Yeah.
To look at it in our section, and it reminds me of 24, the Sutherland show. Yes. I also enjoyed that.
Yeah, and so it's interesting because the first season we watched it, binge it like 4 or 5 days or whatever, like 2 or 3 episodes a night. This one we're watching it week by week. So it's a different experience, and you could experience it both ways, but it's, looking back, because sometimes they have a patient that you've forgotten about. Oh yeah, that guy was sitting in there for 2 hours and he wasn't on the last 2 because he was waiting, because it was just the reality of it, right? I'm sure in those places, like, somebody has to sit there for 2 hours until they get back to him. But yeah, it's an interesting watch.
And I guess if we want to really experience it, we would save all the episodes and then just watch it in one day.
Yeah, that's probably the way a lot of
that'll be next.
But anyway, last question is, and I'm coming your way in another month or so. So I'm looking I always like a hidden gem. Like, you have to give me like a restaurant. It could be a coffee. It could be a walk. It could be a little town. You've got so many beautiful spots in your region. What would be something that might be like the hidden gem that you would recommend to go see or look at or experience?
So I love the Drake in Wellington for a restaurant. And I love it simply because you can get a seat near the window and it's like you're suspended out over Lake Ontario. All you can see is water, nothing else. So I like that.
Okay.
But there's also, if you have time for a bit of a drive, there's a bird sanctuary at the very southern tip of Prince Edward County. And so the drive out there is beautiful. And you get to the end of it, you can take a little walk. There's a lighthouse, and it's just all of Lake Ontario all around you.
Those
It's
are two good
beautiful.
ones. Those are two good ones. I'll see if I can manage that.
You time it right for the bird sanctuary, and they actually like are catching owls at night. You can go out there when they catch the birds and they tag them and let them go, and you can watch the whole thing.
Wow.
So,
Fantastic.
yeah.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for your time and getting to know you a little bit more and your leadership again. Congratulations on all the things that you've been able to accomplish and the things you still want to accomplish within your board, and just your leadership approach. So much appreciated. So thanks for your time and your stories today.
Thanks for having me. Great talking to you.